Part 1. The Unexpected Journey. At just 16, Megan's life took an unexpected turn. One afternoon, she learned that she was pregnant. The news shocked her and her boyfriend, John. They were both teenagers, still figuring out who they were, and now they were going to be parents. Their families were worried, and so were they. It felt like their whole world had changed in an instant. But Megan didn't let fear hold her back. She knew things would be difficult, but she wasn't going to give up on her dreams. She realized that this was her new reality, and now she had to figure out how to make it work. Megan was determined to be the best mother she could be, while still holding on to her own future. Megan's decision wasn't easy. She had always been a good student, with big dreams of becoming something more than just a high school graduate. But now, with a baby on the way, she had to rethink everything. She couldn't go down the usual path many of her peers were taking. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for her baby, too. John, although young, stepped up. He promised Megan that they would figure this out together. They knew it would be hard, but they believed in each other. Together, they made the choice to stay focused, support each other, and build the future they wanted, no matter how hard it would be. Part 2. Facing the Challenges. The first few years after Megan's pregnancy were nothing like she had imagined. She was now a young mom, balancing the challenges of raising a baby with trying to finish her education. It was exhausting, and there were days when Megan didn't know how she was going to get through it all. John helped as much as he could, but being so young, he was still figuring out his own way in the world. They didn't have much money. Megan had to be resourceful, using every moment she had to study, while also caring for her child. Sometimes she'd stay up late studying, making sure she finished her assignments while John looked after their baby. There were times when Megan doubted herself. She'd look at her classmates who seemed to have everything: new clothes, free time, and no worries about balancing school and parenthood. But Megan refused to let comparison drag her down. She wasn't just working for herself, she was working for her son and for the future she dreamed of. Every little victory felt like a huge accomplishment. When she passed a tough exam, it felt like proof that she could make it. And when her son smiled, she knew all the hard work was worth it. Megan's determination to keep going, even when things got hard, became stronger with every day. Part 3. The Turning Point. By the time Megan turned 18, she had achieved something incredible. She graduated from high school. It wasn't easy, but Megan had done it. She had fought through the sleepless nights, the stress, and the doubts. Graduation day felt like a huge milestone, not just for Megan, but for her family and John, too. They had supported her every step of the way, and now she was ready to take the next step toward her dreams. But Megan knew this was just the beginning. She had always dreamed of going to college, but now she faced an even greater challenge. College was expensive, and Megan didn't have the same advantages as many other students. She didn't have the luxury of time to just focus on her studies. She still had to work part-time to help support her family. John, however, was there for her. He encouraged her to apply to college and reminded her that if anyone could handle the pressure, it was her. Megan applied to a local university, determined to continue her education and set a good example for her son. She worked extra hours, found scholarships, and did whatever it took to make her dream a reality. College wasn't easy, but Megan was used to hard work. She took every opportunity to learn, ask questions, and grow. She started to see how everything she had gone through, the challenges, the sacrifices, had prepared her for this moment. She wasn't just doing it for herself anymore. She was doing it for her son and for every young person who thought their dreams were impossible because of the obstacles they faced. Part 4. The Climb to Success. When Megan was 26, she reached a milestone she never could have imagined as a young mother. She had earned her degree and was now a professor at a local university. Her story was no longer just about overcoming challenges, it was about achieving something extraordinary. Megan had gone from a 16-year-old girl facing an unplanned pregnancy to a 26-year-old professor with a thriving career. Becoming a professor wasn't just about earning a title, it was about giving back. Megan knew how much support she had needed to get to this point, and now she wanted to do the same for others. She became a mentor to her students, sharing her story and encouraging them to never give up, no matter the circumstances. Megan's success was a testament to the power of perseverance. She had faced countless obstacles, yet she refused to let them define her. She believed in the power of education and hard work, and her journey proved that with the right mindset, anything was possible. Her story spread quickly, inspiring not just young mothers, but anyone facing difficulties. She became a symbol of hope, showing that success isn't determined. Part 5. A Legacy of Inspiration. Today, Megan is a professor, a mentor, and an inspiration to many. She looks back at her journey with pride, knowing that she turned her challenges into opportunities. Her story is a powerful reminder that no matter how difficult life may seem, the right attitude and a lot of hard work can turn dreams into reality. Megan never forgot where she came from. She always made time to help others, especially young mothers who were struggling like she once did. She gave them the advice and encouragement she wished she had received early on. Megan's life wasn't just about her success. It was about lifting others up and showing them that their dreams were possible too. Her legacy lives on in the lives of all the students she's mentored and all the young women who've heard her story. Megan proved that no matter how old you are or what challenges you face, you can always rise above. Her story isn't just about becoming a professor at 26. It's about the power of perseverance, hope, and the belief that anything is possible if you keep pushing forward. Summary of the story. At 16, Megan's life took an unexpected turn when she found out she was pregnant. Her boyfriend John was just as shocked, but they both knew their lives were about to change forever. Their families were worried, but Megan made a choice. She wasn't going to let this setback define her. She wanted to build a better future for herself, John, and their baby. The first few years were tough. Megan was a young mom, balancing schoolwork and caring for her baby. John helped as much as he could, but they were both still so young. There were sleepless nights and moments when Megan felt like giving up. But she had a dream. She knew education was the key to changing her life. With support from her family and friends, Megan pushed through. She stayed up late, studying for exams while caring for her baby. She dreamed of making a real difference in the world. By 18, she graduated high school, a huge accomplishment, and she wasn't stopping there. Megan worked hard to get into college. It wasn't easy, but she stayed focused. She worked part-time jobs, attended classes, and did her best to be there for her son. John was there with her, encouraging her. By 26, she achieved something incredible. She became a professor. Her journey proved that no matter how tough life gets, dreams are worth fighting for. Megan's story is one of perseverance. She's not just a professor, she's an inspiration to anyone who thinks their dreams are out of reach. With hard work, determination, and the right support, you can turn any situation into success. Megan now teaches and mentors others who face challenges. She knows the struggles of Part 1. A life-changing moment. At 16. At 16, Megan's world changed when she found out she was pregnant. It wasn't planned, and both she and her boyfriend, John, were overwhelmed by the news. They were still teenagers, with no idea how to balance school, life, and a baby. Their families were worried, and they were filled with doubt. But despite everything, Megan made a choice that would define her future. Instead of letting the situation hold her back, she chose to push forward. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she refused to give up on her dreams. Megan was determined to create a better life for herself, John, and their baby. It was clear to her that education was the key to a brighter future. She wasn't going to let being a young mother stop her from reaching her full potential. Megan's resilience and focus on her future were about to change her life forever. Part 2. juggling motherhood and school. The first few years after her pregnancy were incredibly challenging. Megan had to balance being a mom with her education. She was still in high school, trying to figure out how to care for her baby while keeping up with assignments and tests. There were moments when Megan wanted to give up. She felt exhausted, overwhelmed by sleepless nights, and unsure of how she was going to make it. But she kept reminding herself why she was doing it: her baby's future. John was there to help, but he was still figuring out how to manage everything too. Megan knew it was up to her to push forward and make the sacrifices necessary to succeed. Late nights were spent studying for exams while caring for her baby, and Megan didn't give up on her dream to finish school. She completed high school with determination and a new purpose. This was just the beginning, and she was determined not to stop there. Part 3. Graduation and the road to college. By 18, Megan achieved something she never thought possible. She graduated from high school. It wasn't an easy journey, but she had done it. The day of her graduation was one of the proudest moments of her life. Megan had faced so many obstacles, being a young mom, working part-time jobs, and studying, but she had made it. Her dream of finishing school was no longer just a dream. It was her reality. But Megan knew she couldn't stop there. She had bigger goals ahead. College was a dream that seemed out of reach for many young mothers, but Megan didn't let that stop her. She knew that education would open doors for her and her child. She worked hard to save money, applied for scholarships, and pushed herself to get into a local college. It wasn't easy, but her determination kept her going. She wasn't just building a future for herself, but for her son as well. Part 4. Balancing college, work, and motherhood. College life was a whole new challenge for Megan. She was now in her early 20s, working part-time jobs to support herself and her son while attending classes. There were days when she felt like she couldn't juggle it all. But with a clear vision in mind, Megan kept going. She focused on her studies during the day, worked long hours at night, and made sure her son always felt loved and cared for. John was supportive, but Megan knew she had to take responsibility for her future. She would often stay up late, studying until the early hours of the morning, pushing through the exhaustion. Though it was hard, she never gave up. She kept reminding herself that every challenge she faced was just another step closer to her goal. Megan understood that success wouldn't come easily, but she was willing to do whatever it took to reach it. Part 5. Becoming a professor at 26. By the time Megan was 26, she had achieved something incredible. She became a professor at a local university. It was a dream she had worked toward for years. She had overcome so many challenges along the way, from being a young mother to balancing work and school. Her journey wasn't easy, but her hard work, perseverance, and focus had paid off. Megan's story became an inspiration for others. She had proven that no matter how difficult life may seem, dreams could still be realized with determination. Being a professor wasn't just about the title, it was about showing young people that their backgrounds or circumstances didn't define their future. Megan was living proof that with hard work and the right mindset, anything is possible. Part 6. A legacy of hope and inspiration. Today, Megan is not just a successful professor, but a mentor and inspiration to many young people. She uses her own story to encourage others to keep going, even when life feels impossible. Megan's experience taught her the value of perseverance and the importance of believing in yourself, no matter how tough the journey gets. Megan's success isn't just about the career she built for herself. It's about the lives she touches and the message she shares with others. She shows young mothers, students, and anyone facing difficult challenges that success is within reach. Megan's story proves that you don't have to be defined by your circumstances. With determination, hard work, and the belief that anything is possible, dreams can come true at any age. She is a living example of how perseverance can lead to success before the age of 30, and her legacy continues to inspire countless others. Though primary school days were filled with struggles, they were also the foundation of James's journey to greatness. James entered primary school with little more than a small notebook and a pencil. His clothes were hand-me-downs from other children at the orphanage, and his shoes were worn out from years of use. After losing his parents, he found himself in an orphanage where he had nothing but dreams. But despite the lack of resources, James had something invaluable: determination. At school, he quickly noticed the difference between himself and the other children. Many of his classmates had new uniforms, fresh books, and private tutors who helped them after school. James had none of these luxuries, but none of that deterred him. He understood that his mind was his greatest tool, and with it, he could overcome any challenge. Every day after school, while others went home to their families or played with their new toys, James stayed in the classroom. He would search through the old, worn-out books the school provided. They were often torn, but they were his treasures. James would read them over and over, teaching himself things beyond what was taught in class. He knew that knowledge was his ticket to a better future. When the school didn't have enough art supplies, James would use scraps he found to create his own materials. In math, when his classmates relied on expensive calculators, James would borrow one from the library and practice on his own late into the evening. He made sure that nothing stopped him from learning. But James didn't just want to keep up with his peers, he wanted to be the best. His drive was fueled by the understanding that success wasn't about the resources you had. It was about how hard you were willing to work. James didn't care about what others had. He only cared about what he could do with what he had. Soon, his classmates began to take notice. Even though he didn't have the newest books or fancy equipment, James seemed to have all the right answers. Whether it was math, reading, or science, he excelled in every subject. His classmates started to come to him for help. He would explain math problems, share tips for writing essays, and encourage others to read more. One day, the school held a big exam to determine the top student in the class. While many students felt confident, having all the resources they needed, James wasn't worried. He knew that his success was built on hard work and a love of learning, not on the extra tools others had. When the results came in, James was the top student in the class. His classmates were surprised, but James wasn't. He had worked for this moment, putting in countless hours of study while others relaxed. After the results, James became a role model to his classmates. They saw him not just as the smartest in the class, but as someone who made the most of every opportunity. He inspired them to work harder and to believe in themselves, no matter their circumstances. By the time he graduated from primary school, James was known as the top student in his school. His journey proved that even without all the resources, success could be achieved through hard work, resilience, and determination. James had shown his classmates that no matter where you came from or how little you had, you could rise to the top with a strong will and a passion for learning. Those primary school days, full of challenges and struggles, had shaped James into the determined, hard-working person he would become. They were the stepping stones to a future that no one could have predicted, one built on the foundation of a boy who believed in the power of knowledge. As James progressed through school, his reputation as a hard-working, dedicated student grew. He wasn't just the top of his class, he became a leader among his peers. His classmates, once focused on their new books and fancy supplies, began to realize that it wasn't the resources you had that mattered. It was how much you were willing to put into your work. One day, his teacher, Mrs. Daniels, noticed how often students turned to James for help. She saw his ability to explain complex topics in simple ways, his patience, and his genuine desire to help others. Mrs. Daniels took James aside after class and asked him, "James, have you ever thought about becoming a teacher one day?" James was taken aback. "I never thought about it," he said, "but I want to learn as much as I can. I want to help others, just like you helped me." Mrs. Daniels smiled. "I can see you have the heart of a teacher. Keep sharing your knowledge. Keep helping those around you. You have a gift." That moment stuck with James for a long time. He didn't just want to be the best for his own sake. He wanted to make a difference, to help others who struggled the way he had. Inspired by Mrs. Daniels' words, he began to spend even more time teaching his classmates. He would gather them after school, explaining lessons they didn't quite understand. Slowly, more students began to look up to him, not just for his intelligence, but for his kindness and willingness to help others. James's growth wasn't just academic. He had become a mentor, a friend, and a leader to those around him. As he continued to excel, his confidence grew. He knew that the path he had chosen, to work hard, help others, and always keep pushing forward, was the right one. He wasn't just learning for himself anymore. He was building a community of students. By the time he graduated from primary school, James had not only become the best student, he had become the heart of his school, the one everyone turned to for support, encouragement, and inspiration. His journey showed that greatness didn't come from wealth or privilege. It came from hard work, the willingness to learn, and the desire to help others rise alongside you. As James entered secondary school, the challenges only grew, but so did his determination. The books were more advanced, the subjects more complex, and the competition fiercer. Yet, despite the obstacles, James approached each day with the same hunger for knowledge that had fueled him since primary school. By now, he had earned the respect of his teachers and classmates, but he knew that his journey was far from over. He wasn't just competing for grades, he was competing for opportunities. He knew that education was his way out of poverty and his chance to create a better life, not just for himself, but for others too. But secondary school wasn't easy. Many of the students in his class had the resources James had never had: private tutors, new textbooks, and even after-school enrichment programs. Sometimes James would sit quietly, watching others breeze through assignments with the advantage of their privileges. But he never let that discourage him. Instead, he would work harder. He spent long nights studying in the quiet corners of the library, his desk often piled high with old textbooks and notes. One evening, as he was poring over his math problems, his teacher, Mr. Thompson, approached him. "James," he said, "I've been watching you work. You don't have the newest books or the best supplies, but you have something far more valuable: persistence. Keep pushing and never stop believing in yourself." Those words stayed with James. It wasn't about having the best resources, it was about the will to keep going, even when things were difficult. And that was a lesson he carried with him every day. Despite the long hours of study, James still made time to help his peers. He had become a mentor to many of the younger students who struggled just as he had. He'd organize study groups, patiently explaining difficult concepts and offering advice on how to tackle assignments. James had grown into a leader in his school, not just because of his grades, but because he shared his knowledge and encouraged others to believe in themselves, just as he had learned to do. Then, in his final year, the school held a science competition, one that James knew would be highly competitive. Students from all grades would present their projects, hoping to win scholarships and recognition. With no lab equipment or fancy materials at his disposal, but he didn't let that stop him. Instead, he focused on what he had: his curiosity, his creativity, and his determination. He spent weeks working on a project about renewable energy, using simple materials he found around the school and the local community. While the other students had fancy gadgets, James's project was built from the ground up, proving that with resourcefulness and hard work, anything was possible. When the day of the competition came, James was nervous. But when he presented his project, explaining how the energy could be harnessed using minimal resources, the judges were impressed. To everyone's surprise, James won first place. He had proven that success didn't come from the materials you had. It came from the passion and effort you poured into your work. Winning the competition changed everything for James. It gave him the confidence to pursue even bigger dreams. He earned a scholarship to attend one of the best universities in the country, something he had only dreamed of just a few years earlier. His victory in that science competition wasn't just about the prize, it was a testament to everything he had worked for, a reminder that even in the face of scarcity, determination, and hard work could lead to extraordinary success. By the time James finished secondary school, he wasn't just the best student in his class. He was a symbol of what could be achieved through resilience, perseverance, and a commitment to helping others. His story was one of rising above challenges, of making the most out of what you have, and of always believing that with hard work, anything is possible. James knew that this was just the beginning. His journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, he had already proved to himself that he could overcome anything. As James moved forward into the next phase of his life, he carried the lessons learned through every challenge and triumph. From his humble beginnings in the orphanage to becoming the best student, he proved that success wasn't determined by resources, but by determination, resilience, and making the most of what you had. James's journey wasn't just about personal success, it was about lifting others. His story inspired many, showing that with hard work and perseverance, even tough obstacles could be overcome. He had gone from a boy with nothing to a young man with the power to change lives. As he stepped into the future, he knew his purpose was bigger than his own dreams. It was about giving others the tools and hope to achieve theirs. James's journey reminded us to never give up. The greatest wealth isn't measured by money or possessions, but by the lives you touch and the difference. Our tale begins in a quaint village, home to a small boy named James. Tragedy gripped this young soul when he lost his parents at merely the age of 5, relegating his life to an orphanage. The days were bleak, the pain ubiquitous. Yet James bore an invincible shield. Hope, empty stomach, threadbare garments, these obstacles didn't deter him. James was convinced that he was meant for an extraordinary life, not confined by the piteous walls of his circumstances. He discovered solace in books, each page a nourishing serving of wisdom and perspectives. Stumbling upon a book detailing the art of the stock market, something sparked within him. He saw in its lines a way of turning his humble existence around. With every coin he saved working odd jobs and every minute spent deciphering complex strategies, he readied himself. He dared to utter constantly, "If they achieved it, why can't I?" James's journey didn't stop at the charity. At 20, he had proven that even a boy with nothing could rise to the top, but he wasn't done yet. He wanted to do more, to make a bigger difference in the world. He had seen the power of education and opportunity, and now he dreamed of creating something even larger. A foundation that could help people from all walks of life, not just orphans. James was not just about building his own wealth anymore. He realized that real success meant empowering others to create their own futures. So, he started a mentorship program within his charity, bringing in successful business leaders, tech experts, and entrepreneurs to teach young people how to think big, how to believe in themselves, and how to turn their dreams into something real. He found a lot of joy in seeing young faces light up when they learned about the possibilities in front of them. Kids who had once felt forgotten now had role models to follow and skills to develop. James personally mentored many of them, sharing his story and the lessons he'd learned along the way. As the years went by, his charity grew, and more people started hearing about the boy who had turned his life around with hard work, smart decisions, and a heart full of kindness. James became a well-known figure, not just in his village but all over the country. People wanted to know how a 20-year-old could be so successful. His answer was always simple. "I didn't start with money, I started with a dream, and I never gave up." By the time he was 25, James's foundation had helped thousands of children and young adults find their path. He was living proof that it didn't matter where you came from. What mattered was where you were willing to go. He continued to invest wisely, using his wealth to expand his charity, fund scholarships, and even start new businesses to create jobs for others. The boy who once had nothing now had everything he needed to change the world. James knew the true measure of wealth wasn't in the millions he had made, but in the lives he had touched. Every story of success, from someone he had helped was worth more to him than any amount of money. James's story didn't just teach people about wealth. It taught them about the power of resilience, kindness, and believing in the impossible. And though his wealth was now vast, his heart was even bigger, because he knew the real treasure in life was the difference you make in the world. And so, at 25, James had become not just a success story, but a legend. A young man who had turned his dreams into a legacy of hope, showing the world that no matter the obstacles, the greatest wealth comes from the impact you leave behind. James's journey continued to unfold in ways he had never imagined. At 25, his story had inspired thousands. But what truly amazed him was how his life had taken shape, not just because of his own efforts, but because he had learned to trust others, build teams, and work with people who shared his vision. The boy who had once been alone, struggling to survive, was now surrounded by a community of passionate people, young and old, who were committed to making the world a better place. His charity had grown far beyond what he had ever expected. It had expanded across the country, with local branches in different towns, all offering educational resources, scholarships, mentorship, and career opportunities. Every time James visited one of these branches, he saw the spark in the eyes of young people who were finally being given the chance they deserved. One day, while visiting a new branch in a small town several hours away from home, James met a young girl named Maya. She was shy, quiet, and had been through a lot in her short life. Maya's parents had passed away when she was young, and she had been bouncing from one foster home to another. But when she joined James's program, she finally found stability and hope. She told James her story, how for years she had thought her life would never change, and how, thanks to the mentorship she received from the charity, she now believed she could become a doctor. Maya's words hit James deeply. It reminded him of his own struggle, how he, too, had once felt invisible and lost. Maya wasn't just a success story. She was the living proof that the world had room for change. James realized that his mission had always been bigger than making money or building a successful charity. It was about breaking the cycle of hopelessness and giving people the chance to rewrite their own stories. But the road ahead wasn't easy. James had to face many challenges. He began to encounter resistance from people who didn't believe in his vision. Some were skeptical of his success, questioning how a young man from an orphanage could build something so powerful. Others were hesitant to trust the charity's ability to deliver real, lasting change. There were times when James felt doubt creeping in. He had never been trained to run a large-scale operation. He was a self-taught investor and an accidental philanthropist. But he knew one thing for sure. If he gave up now, all those young people counting on him would lose the chance they'd fought so hard for. And so, James pressed on. He surrounded himself with experts, people who were passionate about his cause and had experience in building nonprofit organizations, running successful businesses, and helping others. Together, they formed a strong team, each member bringing their unique skills to the table. James knew that success was never about doing everything yourself. It was about building a team that believed in the mission as much as you did. Slowly, but surely, James's efforts started to bear even more fruit. The foundation started receiving recognition from other organizations, governments, and even corporate partners who saw the value in investing in the future of the youth. James became a speaker at international conferences, sharing his story and encouraging others to find ways to make a difference. His name became synonymous with the power of hope, resilience, and creating change from the ground up. Despite all the success, James remained humble. He never forgot where he came from. Every year he would return to the orphanage where he grew up. He would walk through the familiar halls, visit the rooms where he once slept, and speak to the children who were there now. He would tell them his story, how, just like them, he had started with nothing. He reminded them that no matter how difficult life was, they had the power to change their future. And he would tell them, "You are never alone. You just have to believe in yourself. And keep going. His visits were always emotional for James. They reminded him of the child he once was, struggling to survive, dreaming of a better life. But now, he was no longer that boy. He was a symbol of hope, proof that hard work, determination, and a little bit of faith could change everything. As James entered his late 20s, his charity had helped hundreds of thousands of young people. He had created scholarships that funded education for thousands of students, from elementary school to university. He had started job training programs, giving young adults the skills they needed to thrive in the workplace. And he had invested in creating businesses that not only provided jobs, but also served as examples of how success could be shared with others. Still, there was one thing James hadn't expected: the ripple effect of his own story. As his charity grew, he noticed something incredible happening. Many of the young people who had been helped by his foundation were now giving back. They had become mentors themselves, teaching the next generation of children that they too could achieve anything they set their minds to. James wasn't just changing lives in the present. He was creating a legacy that would last long after he was gone. One evening, while reflecting on all that he had built, James sat by a window overlooking the city. His thoughts wandered back to the boy he had once been, the orphan with no future. He smiled softly to himself. I was once the one who needed help, but now, by the time James reached his 30s, his foundation had become a global movement. People everywhere were inspired by his story and sought his advice on how to create change in their own communities. Despite all the attention, James stayed grounded, remembering that his success wasn't about recognition, it was about making an impact on others' lives. One of his proudest achievements came when his foundation helped build a new educational facility in a region that had once been overlooked. This facility wasn't just a school, it was a space for learning, creativity, and dreaming. It offered everything from vocational training to art classes, helping young people gain the skills they needed to build a better future. During the opening ceremony, James spoke to the crowd of students, parents, and teachers. He saw the faces of young students light up as he shared his story. He knew they saw in him not just a successful man, but someone who had faced the same challenges they now faced. James told them, "No matter where you come from, you can rise. The only limits are the ones you place on yourself." As the crowd cheered, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about the building, it was about the lives it would change. Those kids would leave with more than education. They would leave with confidence and hope. It was proof that everything he worked for had paid off. Even as his foundation expanded, James never forgot the people who helped him when he had nothing. His mentors, friends, and the staff at the orphanage were the ones who believed in him when no one else did. They were the foundation of everything he became. James continued to speak at schools, universities, and business conferences, encouraging others to take risks, to fail, and to rise again. He reminded them that success was about the journey, not the destination. He spoke about resilience, kindness, and believing in something bigger than yourself. His charity kept growing, reaching new countries and providing opportunities to children and young adults who had nowhere else to turn. More people were inspired to give back, teach others, and pass on the opportunity they had received. Looking around at all he had built, James realized his journey had come full circle. The boy who had nothing had become a man who had given everything. He had turned his dream into a reality, not just for himself, but for thousands of others. His true wealth wasn't measured in money, but in the lives he had touched and the generations that would continue to rise because of the foundation he built.